Hello everyone, and welcome to Yoshi 1 Kenobi's Forsaken Monument Standard deck for Zendikar Rising Standard on MTG Arena. In this deck, the goal is to play Forsaken Monument, the 5-mana legendary artifact that gives colorless creatures you control +2/+2, and whenever you tap a permanent for colorless mana, you add an additional colorless mana. Also, whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life. The main ability is the fact that you double your colorless mana generation. So to take full advantage of this, we're going to be playing all colorless lands. And some of these colorless lands have very powerful abilities. Let's take a look at them. Animal Sanctuary, not that good. You get to put +1/+1 counters on Stonecoil Serpent. Field of Ruins, we're not playing basic, so sack it to destroy a non-basic land your opponent controls. But since we're not playing any basic, that's really bad. Radiant Fountain gains us 2 life, which is decent. Unknown Shores is one of the only remaining lands that give us colorless. And now we'll discuss the top 3 colorless lands in this deck. First one is Labyrinth of Skophos. So for 4 mana plus this, you get to remove an attacking or blocking creature from combat. So you get to remove an opponent's creature with Embercleave and prevent it from attacking after the Embercleave has been put in play, which is really good. But since it's very expensive mana-wise, you really need Forsaken Monument to be in play to start activating Labyrinth of Skophos on a turn-by-turn basis. And there's Bonders Enclave. You get to pay 3 mana to draw a card if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, which we have a couple in our deck, or some creatures that can reach it. And the best one is Crawling Barrens. So you get to pay 4 mana to put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and it becomes a colorless elemental creature until end of turn. That's still a land. So first of all, Forsaken Monument gives it +2/+2 when it's a creature. Second of all, you tap 2 lands to put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So basically, for every land you tap, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it will stay from one turn to the other, making Crawling Barrens a very powerful threat out of your mana base, which is awesome. So now the downside is that since we're playing all of these colorless lands, it means that our land needs to be colorless. So we have to dig quite deep in the 5 standard sets we have right now for colorless stuff. One of the main reasons to double our mana is so we can play Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Everybody should be familiar with this card at this point, or unless you haven't played much Standard. Basically, it's a very powerful planeswalker that acts as a board wipe. We're playing 4 copies of Stonecoil Serpent, because it's a serpent for Animal Sanctuary. And probably the primary reason is once you double the mana off of your lands, it becomes a huge trampling reach threat, which is fantastic. We're playing 4 copies of Myriad Construct, the new edition from Zendikar Rising. And with the mana doubling ability, we can easily kick it. And in certain matchups, that's going to make it a huge creature. In other matchups, it's still a 4/4/4/4 that is very hard to kill. You need to kill it by combat, basically, because if it gets targeted, it splits into a bunch of 1/1s. And for the record, the 1/1s are actually 3/3s if you have Forsaken Monument in play, or if you cast it. Also, number of tokens is equal to Myriad Construct's power, which means that if you have Forsaken Monument, you'll get 6 creatures, which are all 3/3s. Very powerful card in this strategy. Sparkhunter Masticore, we needed a 3-drop. Its protection against Planeswalker is a little phased out now that War of the Sparks is out, but still a positive ability. Also, with double mana comes indestructibility. So if you have double mana, it's easy to keep Sparkhunter Masticore, your 5/6 indestructible at almost all time creatures in play, which does make it fairly good. Then there's Crystalline Giant, or Mecha Godzilla, which is a 3/3, becomes a 5/5. And every turn at your combat step, it gains a new ability. The key one being Hexproof. And once you have Hexproof, First Strike, Death Touch, Trample, Vigilance, and +1/+1 counter, it just spirals out of control if it stays on the board for a while. We're playing Mazemind Tomes. 2 reasons. 3 reasons. All of the abilities. They're all relevant. Scrying is good so we can hit the manas we want. We can hit the Forsaken Monument. Drawing extra card in those slower matchups. Very useful to help us kind of keep pace with Azorius control, for example. Gaining 4 life. Very relevant with all of the red decks that are out there. So all the abilities, good. So we want to play Mazemind Tome. We're playing 1 copy of Ozolith because it's powerful with the Crystalline Giants +1, the specific counters that we get to pass on to a Stonecoil Serpent or a Sparkhunter Masticore, for example. Also, Myriad Construct and Stonecoil Serpents can get a lot of +1/+1 counters, so having the 1 copy of the Ozolith makes a lot of sense. Also playing 1 copy of Shadowspear because it's colorless, and once we have the boost, we can also equip our Crawling Barrens with it for a huge lifelink tramplers if we need to get some damage through, or just gain some life. And Inquisitive Puppet, because the deck is a little awkward in terms of the cards we're playing early, we need some defense, then Inquisitive Puppet is the best defensive card for 1 mana, or 2 mana in colorless colors. So let's see what this awkward deck does with a bunch of cards that have seen little play in Standard so far, and let's see if Zendikar Rising puts it to the high on the metagame. Let's see it in action with some games. We are playing Forsaken Monument on MTG Arena Standard against a rat bear. I'm kind of imagining a bear with kind of whiskers of the rat that goes hee 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 hee. So let's take a look at our hand. We have a Puppet, a Shadowspear, Mazemind Tome, and our Forsaken Monument, which is excellent. We'll get to open up Puppet, Tome, and then maybe Shadowspear the Puppet. So it becomes an impressive 1/3. Oops, I do want to play the Puppet. I get a Scry. I like the Construct. I really like the Construct. Even though we do need lands, but we'll have the Mazemind Tome to help us dig for lands. Opponent plays a Fervent Champion, which will hit a wall of wood made by our Puppet. We will play the Mazemind Tome to start digging for said lands. No attacks. Pass the turn. Opponent is still stonewalled by our Puppet. Alright. You tried. Kargan Intimidator. Now that we know what you're playing, let's scry for land. Radiant Fountain is perfect. Now we will play the Radiant Fountain. We will play the Shadowspear. There is no real point in equipping Shadowspear. I'd rather draw the card. Let's keep the mana open, regardless. We should still be able to block the Fervent Champion. Oh, but now we have a neat trick. Robber of the Rich. Come on, say that I can't block you. Ah, that's tempting. We could sack the Puppet and attempt to block the Intimidator. Let's see what we're gonna draw. Let's start there. Another Myriad Construct. So we'll have a bunch of big blockers next turn. Let's just block the champion. Yeah, that would have also worked. I forgot the +1/+1 ability. Let's go with the Field of Ruins. Myriad Construct as a 4/4. Not that kicking it would make it any bigger. It's only 4/4 that spawns a horde of tokens. It's quite good at what it's doing. Target it. You know you want to. We have the monument. Come on. I want to have 4 3/3s instead of 1 4/4. Opponent passes to attacker. Opponent attacks with an Ember Cleavable Force. So block the Fervent Champion. Will block the Intimidator. Give himself Trample. Let's block the Robber. Yeah, I really didn't want to get blown out by Ember Cleave. Who do you attach it to? Yeah, I guess. I'll kill the Myriad. Oh, we'll trade. Let's scry. Nope. Not in this matchup. Radiant Fountain. I like Radiant Fountain. So now we could Forsaken Monument and take 10 next turn. Is that what we want to do? Then we could Myriad Construct, equip Shadowspear as a 7/7. Have Crawling Barrens. I think that's what we want to do. Forsaken Monument. I also have the 4 life from Mazemind Tome that we can use. As long as our opponent doesn't... Well, even land Anax isn't that bad. Our opponent is tight on mana. So if our opponent equips Ember Cleave, then that's their turn. And we have Myriad Construct. Okay. Don't have a problem with just Robber attacking. You have more cards in hand than I do. Anax. That I have a bit more of a problem with. Because Anax Ember Cleave really hurts. We'll play our land. So we can Myriad Construct. But then we can't activate the Unknown Shores. So we can make it a 7/7. We can activate the Crawling Barrens now for 8. Well, for 2 ticks. So it becomes a 6/6, equip Shadowspear. Becomes a 7/7 lifelink. Opponent can equip on Anax. If opponent equips on Anax, then that's their turn. Yeah, so that's a 7/7 lifelink. That'll grow next turn. Or do I want to Shadowspear the Myriad Construct, which is going to be a 7/7. That one's a hard one. Because if opponent plays anything red, we'll be in a bit of trouble. So let's go with that line. Hit you for 7. Pass the turn back. If our opponent just equips Ember Cleave, then that's 14. 14 plus 5 is 19. If opponent plays anything red, they can go over to 20. But with Mazemind Tome, we should be good. Alright, so that's 16. 16 is fine. It's back to us. We can use a little bit of the timer now to think about what we're going to do. So you can put 4 more counters, bring it to an 11-11 trample. That's 12. It's not quite enough. Labyrinth of Skophos changes things, because now we get to bring that Anax out of combat. Need to keep 2 lands opened. So I guess we apply the maximum amount of pressure. We activate Crawling Barrens one more time. Becomes a huge creature. We equip the Shadowspear, and opponent sees the writing on the wall. And with the Labyrinth of Skophos being able to tap down Anax, we take down the victory with a Forsaken Monument in Standard. We are playing Forsaken Monument on MTG Arena Standard against UNR 3-4-1. We have a pretty good hand here. Have 3 lands, a 1-drop, a 2-drop, a potentially 3-drop, and a 4-drop. Let's open up with Field of Ruins and our puppet. Ugin. We can't afford Ugin here. Not with our opponent playing a mountain turn 1. As much as I would like to play Ugin. One's playing big red? Looks like a big red deck. Let's play it Mazemind Tome and pass the turn back. With our defensive puppet holding ground. Our red deck opponent is in fear of our wooden puppet. That's a 0-2. Let's activate Mazemind Tome, getting us closer to that 4 life, and scrolling that other extra copy of Mazemind Tome to the bottom of our deck. So on 3, we'll cast this Stonecoil Serpent. And now we have a blocker for Anax, Hardened in the Forge. Royal Eruption. Okay. I'm not afraid of taking 2. I'll take it. I'll scry. Yeah, Labyrinth's pretty good. And we'll draw for turn. Play the Labyrinth. Play the Myriad Construct. It's not going to be much use kicking it against a red deck wins opponent anyways. Alright, now you should be able to hold the fort moderately well. Yeah, you can target it. It explodes into 4 1/1s. Now we have 4 1/1 constructs as our opponent placed Thorbrand. Opponent declines to attack, so he will scry. No, not what we're looking for right now. Draw for turn. Sparkhunter Masticore. Not exactly what we're looking for. Let's go Serpent for 5. And pass the turn. You can't kill that one with a royal eruption unless you. Oh yeah, never mind. Torbran. Well, let's get rid of Torbran. Let's hope that our opponent does not have Embercleave, because we are going to get exploded if that's an Embercleave. Eh. That hurts. At least it's not an Embercleave. But yeah. We'll lose 2 tokens, and we'll pass to our next turn. Alright, that's interesting. Let's draw a card. And gain 4 life. Forsaken Monument. That's really good. It's enough to cast Ugin, so we'll play the Masticore as a defensive measure. Although next turn we're likely to just chump block Anax. No, chump with the 1/1. I'll take 4, that's fine. And Forsaken Monument is going to give us a nice little boost on our creatures. And then we will have Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. Rubber, that hurts. Opponent hit a land, and now we just want to avoid as much damage as possible. So we have a block on Anax. Doesn't really matter. We can block Torbran here. Torbran hits it for 4. Yeah, that's fine. Opponent gets a ton of tokens. Ah, second Anax. And now it is good game. Because we get to Ugin and gain life. Exile everything you have. Keep everything we have. And that's how you do it. Ugin just in time against Mono Red. We are playing Forsaken Monument on MTG Arena Standard. This is a pretty good hand. We have our namesake card, a Forsaken Monument. Or should I say name Forsaken? Namesaken. And we have a bunch of lands. So let's open up with a Crawling Barrens into an Inquisitive Puppet. Now that's a sentence you won't hear very often. We do want to draw more lands to make it to that Forsaken Monument. Opponent is playing Temur. Maybe the Clover deck. We do not care as we play a Mazemind Tome. And we'll pass the turn back to our opponent. We'll get a Crystalline Giant on our next turn. Now our opponent is playing Temur Clover. Problem is that deck has options to remove artifacts, which is problematic, but that's alright. Mecha Godzilla, enter the fray and start gaining iterative advantage like flying. Alright, Beanstalk Giant on turn 3 without a Clover. That's perfectly acceptable. Second Edgewall Innkeeper is problematic, especially considering we have 0 pieces of removal. Let's just take our next turn. Go to combat! Mecha Godzilla, what do you have? Flying in first strike. Alright. 3 damage from our flying first striker. Then let's play our Myriad Golem without kicker. And we have a 4/4. If it gets targeted, we get 4 1/1s. And little does our opponent know that they'll all become 3/3s. The second we cast our Forsaken Monument. So it would actually be quite advantageous for us if our opponent targeted the Myriad Construct with anything. Opponent hard casts the Fave Wishes as a creature. You have a 4/4. Uro, gain 3 life. You know you're in good shape when your opponent's hard casting Fave Wishes defensively. And our opponent's going to have a lot of trouble if Mecha Godzilla gets Hexproof. Oh, here we go. Forsaken Monument! Boost our creatures. Give us mana. Mecha Godzilla now has Trample. Might as well attack with everything. Puppet included. Not looking so bad. A 2/4 for 1. But you get a sack and get a 1/1 out of it. This is exactly how the deck wants to play. It's right on curve. The Forsaken Monument's right on curve. Next turn we get to activate the Crawling Barrens. We actually get to boost it to a 6/6. That's going to dodge removal. Can't be targeted by a Brazen Borrower because it's a land. It's actually going to be fairly hard for our opponent to deal with, as we pummel our opponent for 13 points of damage and pass the turn back. You get a counter swing 4/4. I guess hard casting the Giant's an option. Hard casting Lovestruck Beast to draw 2. That's also something you can do. Fortunately, Forsaken Monument is legendary, so we can't cast the second one. Well, we can, it's just pointless mostly. I don't like this. Opponent's gonna Brazen Borrow us. I'll move to combat. I know you want to. Alright. Well. Start generating some mana. Well, let's attack. So Mecha Godzilla tramples for 1, which means our opponent needs to block both our 6/6s. Okay. That's something you can do. Bounce the Monument. Now our Inquisitive Puppet looks a little silly. That's alright. Yeah, I'll sack the Puppet. Get a 1/1 instead. Really wish Myriad Construct was a death trigger and not a when targeted. Or when targeted or dead. Still okay. We're getting our opponent down to 3. We're losing the Myriad, which is suboptimal. Also, our Crawling Barrens is now pretty big. Opponent sacks the Fable Passage. The 0/4, draw 2 cards for 1 mana. Sign me up. Well, their opponent is still on the Mecha Godzilla clock. If it gets hexproof, it's going to be very hard for opponent to deal with it. And once it gets Death Touch, I have Trample. So yeah, once we get Death Touch and a hexproof, our opponent's going to be hard pressed. Well, our opponent does have an attack here, so we have a clock on our head. Scribe. Let's see what we get. Field of Ruins. Let's see land. Do we want to land? We want to play the Forsaken Monument, so I guess we do want to land. Yes, I'll accept the chump. Five, 10, 13. Opponent has 13 on the board. Dead touch for game? Oh no. Don't tell me there's another Brazen Borrower. Menace. That'll do nicely. No! Opponent. Oh, opponent dies. Opponent did not read what Mecha Godzilla got this turn. You needed to bounce the Godzilla. Foolish opponent. And we get our opponent for not reading the text on our card. And that's how it's done with colorless shenanigans. We are playing Forsaken Monument on MTG Arena Standard against Cards for Kids. You're not playing cards, we're the ones playing colorless shenanigans. And we'll keep this. As we have the turn 1 Shadowspear into turn 2 Mazemind Tome, like most decks. It's actually a pretty good curve now that we have the Mecha Godzilla on 3. Opponent's playing some sort of blue. Blue-white. Azorius control. Alright, that's going to be a different matchup. We can play this. Let's open up with a Mecha Godzilla. What did we get? Lifelink. No, it can get lifelink. Draw land for turn. I guess I should have equipped the Shadowspear on it. I'm going to get lucky and get the +1/+1 counter. Let's draw a card. And cast a second copy of Mazemind Tome. Because why not? Opponent is playing Yorion. Likely. Azorius Yorion. One top, one bottom. Smells like a shatter is coming. Back to us. Let's draw a card. It's a land. So let's go Shadowspear. This time I won't forget. Lifelink Trample. And a +1/+1 counter for 5 lifelink damage. And I'll pass the turn. Vanishing Light. That's alright. It's our turn again. Let's take the opportunity to cast the Forsaken Monument. Oh no. Alright, it resolves. So now we have tons of mana. Oh, and our opponent taps out. That's going to play very good for us. Because we get to Ugin and gain 2 life. And our opponent scoops in the face of Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. We are playing Forsaken Monument on MTG Arena Standard against 6-foot Sevthrian. Pretty good hand. We have our Forsaken Monument, our Inquisitive Puppet, and a Mazemind Tome. Let's open up with our Labyrinth. Labyrinth Puppet. That's a good way to keep our opponents guessing. We don't need a second Forsaken Monument. Mostly because it's a legendary artifact. Because tripling the mana off of our lands would be pretty good. Akumel Hound. So you're telling me that that's another red opponent? Nonsense. Nobody plays red. Didn't mean to do that. Let's pass a turn. Let's cry off of our Mazemind Tome. A 2/3 for 1. It's just that good. Ooh, the intimidation tactics have begun. Let's cry. Yeah, I like Radiant found in this matchup. So let's play it. Do I want a Stonecoil for 1? No, I think I have the Stonecoil for 3. And pass the turn back. Do you have landfall for the turn? Yes, you do. Landfall Annex. Alright. So there will be no attacks from your part. Alright. I'll take the trade. I'll trade the full puppet for the Intimidator. I'll scry again. Nope. Don't want the second Forsaken Monument. Come on, deck. I've already told you this. Field of Ruins. Ah, well, we have a cute animal sanctuary trick here. We don't quite have enough mana for Skophos. Landfall. One moves to combat. With everything, so that's probably an Embercleave. Alright. You may Embercleave. So that's a lot of damage. Down to 8. Second Akuma Hellhound. Let's draw a card. Bonders Enclave, Labyrinth. Alright. So what's our game plan here? You can play Labyrinth of Skophos and keep the Anax at bay. Yeah, let's go for this. We really need to keep the Embercleaved Anax out of combat. It's going to cost us our turn, but we have lands, and as long as we keep on making our land drops. So we have 4 life at the ready from the Mazemind Tome. Problem is, Stonecoil Serpent is just a little small right now. And yeah, that is a problem. So if we use Animal Sanctuary to boost it, it'll live, but then Anax swings for 14. We really need Labyrinth of Skophos, the Anax. So I think we have to let it die. Yes, yes. You shall not attack. Crawling Barrens. It's always a good one. And we'll pass the turn. And we are dead. Mostly anyways. Well, we have the Labyrinth of Skophos, the Anax. And we have to gain 4 life out of the main Mazemind Tome. From 1 mana short from drawing a Ugin, even if we had it. Fountain doesn't do it. We need a board wipe for 7 colorless mana. Ah, come on! If only we would have been able to play the Forsaken Monument. Well, yeah. We're just so close. So close. Can't believe we drew the Ugin. Now our deck is just taunting us. But yes, that is good. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe by clicking the Yoshi icon at the right of your screen. It doesn't cost you any mana, and it greatly helps to support this channel and keep the awesome videos coming.